Hey, so today I will be reviewing a really amazing book. This one doesn't get the full attention it really deserves because a lot of people know the author for the other famous book that he has written, How to Win Friends and Influence People, and they don't give enough importance to this one, even though, in my personal opinion, this one is equally as important, if not even more important. The name of the book is How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. Because a lot of us spend time worrying about things. It just takes up a lot of our energy and ability to focus. Doesn't get that much results is one of the main reasons behind stress and problems and things like that. Getting anxious about things, worrying ourselves into depression, overthinking, stuff like that. So this book gives a really important take on how you can handle all of it. Anyways, let me begin with the weird hairstyle. The first lesson: our worry is a result of inaction. If there is a problem that is worrying you, you usually know there is an action that you can take that will fix your fear. If you're worried about losing your job, that action is probably doing a job hunt or applying for more positions, or whatever that may be that will get you towards the solution. Because you're avoiding that action, you're worried about losing the current job. Take that action no matter what it is, and that will be one of the ways you can handle the fear. The second one, this one was very important and has been repeated throughout a lot of other books. And if you see a lesson being repeated throughout, consistently across the successful people and knowledge that they share, it is probably important. So the guy says, I think William Osler, we have hundreds of tasks that need to be done, but if we don't take them one at a time, we will break the class. One task at a time, one grain of sand at a time. Essentially, the metaphor used earlier was that our life is like an hourglass. You know, that hourglass that has like grains of sand. At a time, through the hourglass, only one grain of sand can pass at a time, no matter how much you shake it. If you do it too violently, the glass will break. Our lives are just like that. Even though you have so many tasks, you need to focus on one task at a time and ignore all the hundreds of them. Otherwise, it will overwhelm you and you won't be able to get anything done. So, the key: one task at a time, one grain of sand at a time. He further goes on to say that anyone can do something no matter how hard it is for one day. Carry no matter how heavy the burden is, no matter how difficult the job is. You can definitely do it for one day, and that is what you do. You focus on getting through one day at a time. Not the whole service, not the whole year, the long-asked goal. You do it one day at a time, and before you know it, you will reach the destination. Forget the yesterday and don't think of tomorrow. Every day is a new day to the wise man. Every day is a new life. Don't consider yesterday or tomorrow. This was the second very amazing lesson I learned from this book. When there's something that's just really bothering you, and he told stories about people how they were in debt, were failing in all areas of their life, and were developing ulcers from stress, had no idea what to do, how to get out of the predicament, because sometimes you get into these really stressful situations in life that just are threatening everything. And you look at the past mistakes you made to get to that point and you're wondering about the future, how you are going to get out of it. Don't worry about any of that. Just think of every day that you live is a new day. Don't think of the past or the future. You're only living the present, and what are you going to do today? Focus on that. How are you going to make the best of today, the day you have? And that makes life so much more interesting, and this is something that I actually tried. And it is surprisingly one of the better approaches to things, because not only I, well, get more courageous and get a better perspective of things, and just solutions come to my mind, or I just do what I actually want to do. But also that it doesn't overwhelm you and doesn't stress you that much, which sometimes is the actual key that you need to get yourself out of the problem. Coming up, no day will ever come back. Life is speeding today. Earth is moving through the cosmos at the speed of 19 miles per second. You're never in the same position. So make the best of it. Right now. Today. Moving on, the third lesson, key takeaway from this book. Consider the worst case scenario. Instead of letting your mind jump, ask yourself, is the worst case scenario really bad? You lose your business, like then what? You will likely get a new job, right? You get fired, so you find another one. A lot of the times we are avoiding the worst case scenario. But if you just take a break and actually consider what's actually the worst thing that's going to happen, and what will you do once it happens? How will you get yourself out of it? That completely calms your mind down. Every problem has a solution. Okay, instead of racking your brains about how you're going to avoid it, think about what will happen if that worst case scenario actually happens. You ask someone out, they ditch you, or you get injured, or I don't know, you break your bone, you get late for work, you get stuck in a traffic jam. Something terrible happens, you go into debt. What are you going to do in that situation? I'm sure there's a way to get out of it. And once you accept that, it puts your mind at ease. It's kind of something similar to what Dai says. Everything that's going to happen to you is within your ability to prepare for. But not that. This one is just coming to peace with it. Moving on. This another extremely important lesson. The worst case scenario rarely happens. 99% of the things that you're worried about never actually happen. This has happened to me as well. There was a time when I was like doing this job and I was making mistakes non-stop. And I was worrying I might get fired. This was the first time I read this book. I just read it recently again to refresh my thoughts for this video. But at that time, after reading this book, I was like, okay, I'll stop worrying about it. I didn't get fired, by the way. It never happened. Same with a lot of other things. I thought I would go bankrupt in the business I was trying to start, or something really worse will happen. They rarely happen. The things you worry about not always happen. That energy that you're gonna waste thinking of those things is better spent on looking at the positive side of life and how you will handle the best case scenario. Moving on. There was this amazing story of a guy who was told by his doctors that he was gonna die. He has some stomach issue. So they had to pump his stomach or something. And he was relying on soda or whatever, had really terrible ulcers. And then when he thought he was going to die, he was like, what do I want to do before I die? I want to travel the world. Then he thought to himself, this is probably the only time I will get to do it, so might as well get at it. So he literally bought a casket, made a deal with the shipping company that they're gonna carry the casket with him, and if he dies, they're going to put him in the casket and put him in the freezer, the like frozen compartment of the ship, until they get back, and then he can be buried at the site he wanted to be buried at. But anyhow, moving on. The doctors told him not to do it. He still went for it. And guess what? He enjoyed life so much, the thrills of being at the sea, moving from country to country. Also, he saw some really worse conditions, which made him realize that life back at home is really amazing. All of his stress went away. He actually put on weight. The ulcers disappeared. The chronic worrying that led to all the problems was over. I'm sure that might not always happen in your case. But still, it is something to put into perspective. it was a really fun story to read. Anyways, moving on. Fifth review, a very helpful one. Look at things from another person's perspective. So let's say you're having relationship problems or financial problems or health problems or whatever. Look at it from another person's point of view and think, if you were trying to look at another person's problem, is it really that bad? And most likely you will realize it is not. That guy he'll be fine. The problem will go away. He'll pull himself out of it just fine. That is at least what I thought when I analyzed my problems after reading this. And, well, do it. Your problems. Look at yourself from another person's perspective. Imagine that you are someone else, okay, like a complete stranger, and you were looking at yourself like you were looking at a stranger, and see the problems that he's facing. Are they really that bad? Probably not. Puts things into perspective, and also makes it more easier for you to come up with solutions, or just brush it off. You're like, it will be fine, even if you don't know the solution. Something will come up. Anyways, the other one, look at the facts. Alright, quite often we create a huge myriad of assumptions and possibilities and things like that, but when you actually look at the facts, alright, that will put things in perspective. What is the likelihood that you are going to fail? A lot less. What is the likelihood it's going to impact you in a worse way? Very less. What is the actual problem? Is it really that big of a problem? If you just look at the facts, you will see that things are not really that bad. Alright? So usually write these things down. What am I worried about? I am worried about not finding the right people. Let's just give that as an example. What can I do about it? What is the problem? Not finding the people. What is the cause of the problem? Maybe because I haven't approached things in the right way. Again, you need to think about the answers. What are the possible solutions? Go out there. Try to find the right ones. Go to military or whatever. Ask ChatGPT. Brainstorm. Ask for advice. What is the best solution? So you write these things down, you brainstorm, you come up with an answer. And that should, hopefully, most likely will make things a lot more easier. When you're writing the answers, it automatically makes it more likely for you to get to an outcome. This is at least what the author said in the book. I haven't personally tested it, but it seems like a very logical thing because I have done it before. And usually writing things down helps. You don't actually have to write it down with a pencil. You can just make a note in your phone or notepad like this, from which I'm reading right now. Moving on. This was one of the best takeaways from this book. Get busy. If you're worried, get busy. It's like how Winston Churchill said, I am too busy. I have no time to worry. When you're working, you can't worry at the same time when you're focused on trying to get something done, alright? Do all the menial things in the house, fixing the windows, whatever. Don't give yourself time to think. Quite often, depression, sadness, and anxiety kicks in when people are by themselves. Their thoughts run wild. But if you just get busy, you will get over the problem that is haunting you, alright? There's a term for this that got introduced in the military by a doctor. So what he noticed was that when these soldiers who came back from wars, they have lost their brothers, they have been through hell, really worst case scenarios. If you leave them to be, they will most likely start getting worse with PTSD, something like that, post-traumatic stress syndrome, have their situation go worse, develop even severe issues. But if you let them be busy, alright, give them any task to do, like even digging holes, seriously, doing these basic stuff, It keeps their mind occupied, which in turn makes it easier for them to forget the troubles until they are in a better, more calm state of mind, so they can analyze things better. But yeah, if there's something that is really haunting you, get busy. Don't give yourself time to think. If your loved one died, get busy. If you don't want to cope up with the sadness right now, I shall lose myself in action, then lose myself in despair, because without action you will just get depressed. Here was another good one. Guy talked about how a story, he was in a submarine when a Japanese envoy came in and started uh, giving out depth charges or something, which if they were missing out by like inches, and he knew that if it hit him he was gonna die very soon. And he looked back at his life and realized that he wished he had done his priorities right. He spent most of his time worried about the things that were not really that important. About buying good clothes for his wife, or being stressed out about his boss, or the job he didn't like, all sorts of these things. But he was like, if, instead of worrying about all of that, I had actually gone out and enjoyed life and did the things I really wanted to do, that would have been better. Point being, don't let the little things drive you crazy. Quite often we handle the big things, but we give too much importance to the little things that start taking over all of our life. Alright, you need to really realize your priorities and give importance to the things that actually matter. They actually did an analysis of a guy who was trying to convince people to buy his products or something, and then he started hating his job. He was like, people are not interested. But then he checked and realized that most clients, he would close them on the first sale, like 60-70%, remaining 20% on the second call, and on the third call all the other guys. And he was like, the third ones were the most difficult ones that were annoying him the most. Just don't make the third call. Focus on the first and the second. Optimize your life for the things that are important and big. Don't let the little things take over. Again, 99% of the problems I worried about never happened. Here's another one. Law of averages. What is the likely chance, based on the law of average, that the problem you're worried about will actually happen? Has it happened to you before when you made a mistake? Did they kick you out? Or when you said something stupid during a date? Did they walk out? Or when you didn't exercise enough, did you die of a heart attack right away? Of course not. You missed a gym class, you got late. Law of averages. Most likely you won't die in a car accident. You won't die of a lightning strike. People sometimes worry about really stupid things. Think of the average. It doesn't really happen. Moving on, another really helpful takeaway. Stop loss on the hatred, on the anger, on the negative emotions. People put stop losses in the stock market, so whenever it falls below a certain threshold, it automatically sells the stock to minimize the loss. You do the same thing with your hate and negative emotions. Don't feed them further than a specific extent. Don't hate someone so much. Don't resent someone so much, okay? Don't worry so much. Don't get so much anxious. If you see you're getting a bit more anxious about something, completely forget about it. Okay, you don't need to give it any more thought than it requires. One of the main factors in those with high blood pressure and hypertension is resentment. If you want to get sick, resent things a lot. It's like how a wise guy once said that if you holding on to anger is like drinking poison yourself and expecting the other person to get sick. It doesn't work that way. Don't try to get even with someone. It makes things worse for you. To be wronged and robbed is nothing unless you continue to remember it. You don't have to be even. You forgive and forget for your own well-being, not for the sake of the other person. Alright? Because rarely if you're trying to get even, it actually harms you more than it harms the other guy. So don't think about it. Just move on with your life. Even if someone was a dick to you or whatever, don't give it that much thought. Move on. You may be burdened with gratitude and loneliness and connection and the need to be loved, but the only way you can get it is by not asking for it, but pouring it without expectations to the world. So quite often people are expecting gratitude. This is another important thing I noticed. Or are expecting better partners or better colleagues or things like that. You don't actually get it by simply expecting it. Don't expect anything. Instead, give it out without expectations, genuinely for the sake of being happy, for loving someone just because you care about them, not because you expect them to love you in return. And that is something that I struggled with my parents. I was expecting them to be perfect, but when I stopped doing that, instead I just started caring for them, for who they are, because they are important to me. Their approach changed. True life lesson, right? I was sad about the fact that I had no shoes until I walked and saw a man that had no feet. In the moment, I realized how rich I am. Will you sell your eyes for $1 billion? How much for the legs? How much for the arms? If you add things up, you'll realize how rich you are. This was an important lesson. Don't think you're in a worst case scenario just because of a few problems. You are so much better off than you realize if you take the time and focus on the 90% of the things in your life that are right, instead of focusing on the 10% that are wrong. If you want stomach ulcers, you focus on the 10% that are wrong and ignore the 90% that are right. If you want to be happy, you focus on the 90%. Turning lemons into lemonade. This was an interesting story. Guy went to a farm, had a lot of rattlesnakes, couldn't keep animals there. What he decided to do? He started a rattlesnake farm, and then people would come there to eat rattlesnake meat. The venom would be exported for medicines. The skin would be sold to make shoes and expensive items and things like that. Literally turned his lemons into lemonade. Real life example. Turn your enemies into friends by helping them out. A girl used to bully the kid, but he got the advice. You can actually turn your enemies into your friends by being useful to them. So he started helping them out with tests and things like that. And they started caring a lot about him in return. Be useful. Everything shall pass. I shall do all good with kindness. I can write here, for I won't walk this way again. Yeah, so a few good key takeaways. It has almost been 20 minutes. More than 20 minutes. But a very amazing book, especially the last few ones. Really put your life into perspective, right?